What happens when you drop a pumpkin?
What?
It's squashed.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Seeds and Weeds podcast brought to you by Small House Farm. Are you a gardener, forager, an herbalist? Maybe you're just a little plant curious? You've come to the right place. This is Seeds and Weeds.
Hey guys, welcome back to Seeds and Weeds podcast. We are talking all about squash today.
It is the season of the squash. We're going to be digging into everything squash related, from growing and harvesting squash to saving squash seeds. We're taking squash in the kitchen to make a wonderful, whole selection of wonderful, delicious foods. And we're even going to be in the apothecary for a little while, learning about the medicinal benefits of this wonderful fall crop.
First, we're going to look back at the season. I have a little excerpt from Grow Great Vegetables that I thought was really perfect for this time of year as we're watching the leaves fall and we're kind of reflecting upon the season that passed and moving into the winter. So looking back on the season, it's time to pull back, stop rushing, and relax a little. At first, I wonder what to do with the extra time between sunset and bedtime, but I figure it out. I fill it with reading, writing, and more time with my kids. Each season brings with it another layer of understanding. Each season, you'll observe more details about how plants grow, what makes them thrive, and what alters them. This slow compilation of observed details is a rewarding aspect of being a gardener. You're building a database around a microcosm that no one else will ever completely understand and is difficult to communicate. It's something that can only be built by hours in your own garden. This is your own special knowledge to cherish.
Oh, I like that. It's interesting to think about that, the microcosm, and how unique it is. Every garden is unique. Each season, your garden is unique, but your garden is unique compared to anybody else's, right? It's an experience that is unique to each gardener, the different combination of plants, the season, the things that we grow. It's special every time.
Yeah, where we're at in our own lives and what's happening around us and what we chose to focus on that season is always so different. And actually, two different gardeners could be in the same garden and observe and note different things.
Now, before we jump into all the squash fun, we're going to give a shout out to our friends over on the Patreon. You know, our community on Patreon, their support is what makes this podcast possible. Many of the things that we do at Small House Farm are made possible through our Patreon community. And, you know, our members get a ton of benefits. So it's a good exchange. You know, everybody's happy. We get to share that time together, and they get a lot of different posts and special content and recipes. There's been so much stuff in there. I've been loving this new plant of the week that you've been doing, this herb of the week. I would love it. Is it herb of the week?
It's plant of the week because it's not always an herb. Sometimes it's been a vegetable. It's been a fruit.
This
been
recently
herbs.
was a pine tree.
Yeah.
You know, talking about the many ways that we could enjoy these plants, whether we're growing it or harvesting it for food or medicine or whatever it might be. There's just all this information. Anyways, a shout out to our latest members that have joined us since the last episode. Big thank you, of course, to all of you for your support. Paul, Rose, Froggy, Chrissy Marshall, Mitch, Brenda, and Kathy. We love having you in the community. We really appreciate you. Those of you that are listening, if you enjoy the podcast and you want to show your support and be a part of our community, of course, you can find a link to do that down in the show notes where everything else is going to be at, or at patreon.com/smallhousefarm.
And just keep in mind that the seasonal herb boxes that we ship each quarter, if you're interested in getting in on the winter box, the deadline for that is November 20th. So you do need to be signed up as a seasonal herb lover or above tier in order to qualify. So get on that Patreon, check it out, and sign up so that you can get a super cool box. It'll ship to you around December 22nd. So you'll get it just in time for the holidays. It's a super fun gift at your door.
Of all sorts of handcrafted seasonal herbal products, very unique things, not products that you can buy off of our website. These are special to these boxes. It's really, really cool collections, specially curated just for you.
What does a veggie wear to the beach?
I don't know. What does a veggie wear to the beach?
A zucchini.
Excellent. So let's dig into the squash in the garden. Let's grow some squash. One of the important things that we need to know before we even plant a seed, we have to determine what kind of squash do we want to grow? What are we planning on doing with it when we harvest it? So first, our squash are going to fall into two categories. We've got summer squash and winter squash. As the name summer squash implies, these are fruits that we're going to mostly enjoy during the summertime. And we're going to pick them when they're young and tender. So you can think of things like zucchini, yellow crooknecks, patty pans, those types of squash. These are called summer squash, and we pick them when they're young, tender, and immature. Some of them very, very young. I like to pick them when they're really, really tiny. It seems the younger they are, the more tender and delicious. The other squash, the opposite side of this now, is the winter squash. Now, these are going to grow during the same time of year as our summer squash. We call them winter squash because they are storage fruits that we often will hold throughout the winter months. So this is going to be a number of different varieties. So we could think of things like butternuts. We could think of kabocha squash, Hubbard squashes, that sort of thing. These are our winter squash. We allow these fruits to stay on the plants until they are fully mature. They're going to give those telltale signals of maturity, right? So the fruit's going to change colors. That's the most obvious one. You can think of like how a pumpkin turns orange when it's ready, or a Hubbard might turn blue, or whatever it is. The fruit will change colors to signify its maturity. The skin will get very thick. Whereas with like a tender summer zucchini, you could push your thumbnail right through it. With a winter squash, you want to leave it on that plant until that skin is so thick you can't even dent it with your thumbnail. And then the stem of the plant will also turn brown and woody to let us know that it is fully mature, fully ripe, and then it's ready to be harvested off the plant.
Squash are tropical plants that are easily damaged by the frost. So most of the time when we're starting them, we can't even get them out into the garden until the risk of frost is gone. But they don't like to be transplanted. So a lot of times we need to direct sow them right into the garden.
Right. And this is true for most members of this plant family. So this is Cucurbitaceae. So we're looking at squash, of course, but also things like melons and cucumbers. They're all in the same family, and they have a very sensitive root system, and they do not like to be transplanted. So if at all possible, we want to direct sow them. So this is going to be, like you mentioned, after the threat of frost has passed and the soil has had time to warm up. We're going to want to get out there and plant those seeds. Now, if we're growing a very long season squash that may want more time than we can allow it wherever we're growing, sometimes we do start these plants indoors. And if we're going to do that, I'm going to recommend using like a peat pot to start them in, because a peat pot, we don't have to take the plant out of. We can put that peat pot right down into the soil. I like to soak it really nice and then plant in the soil, and it'll kind of break down. So then the roots can get out. So we're not disturbing the root system. This is an important thing, because like you mentioned, these are tropical plants. They're from Central and South America. So they need that warmth. They need a long season, and we want to try to provide that to them the best that we can.
So if your season is short, like ours in Michigan, then sometimes we do start them inside first. And I like to start them in as big a pot as I can. A peat pot, like Ben mentioned, is great. And we've had relatively good success with those transplants. So just something to keep in mind.
Yep, and we also want to make sure that we keep these plants well watered. This is important too. If you think about a squash, eating the fruit of a squash, whether it's a zucchini or a pumpkin or whatever, it's juicy. There's moisture in there. So these plants, they need to be well watered for most of their life, but especially during their fruiting time. When they're producing these fruits, they need regular watering to have the water they need to develop a delicious fruit. So that's very important.
So why did the squash plant blush?
I'm not sure why.
Because it saw the salad dressing. This isn't a joke, but how do we know when our squash is ready to harvest?
I don't know how.
When it's mature.
So this is true for winter squash, but now for our summer squash, like we talked about, we actually want to harvest them when they're immature. But our winter squash, we do want to allow them to mature. And I kind of talked about the signs of maturity that we're looking for anyways. But this is especially important if we're hoping to store these fruits throughout the winter. We have to make sure that they're fully mature before we harvest them off the plants, whether it be for storage or even for seed saving. We want to leave these fruits on the plant long enough to produce seeds. So if we're growing summer squash, a fruit that we're going to want to eat when it's young and tender, but we want to save summer squash seeds, we got to leave some of those fruits behind, to ripen up. And just like our pumpkins and those sorts of winter squashes, these zucchinis will signal us their maturity by doing all of the same things. They're going to change color. Your zucchini, it's going to turn orange, right? It's going to get a thick skin. Stem's going to turn brown. All of those telltale signs. So that's what we're looking for. That's when we know it's time to harvest these mature fruits.
But what does curing the fruits mean?
So this is going to come into the storage thing. This is an important step if we want to store these fruits. So curing them is a process that we're going to put the harvested squash through to ensure a long shelf life. So essentially all that we need to do here is once we harvest our squash, we want to put them somewhere warm. Well, I'm talking 80 degrees or warmer, a very, very warm place. So that could be like on a sunny porch. If you've got a screened in, porch or something like that would be really nice. In your greenhouse, out in the sun, someplace where it's very, very warm. If you don't have a place like that, you could put them next to a space heater, in a cupboard, something like that, so to really warm these fruits up. And what happens here is when we expose these harvested ripe fruits to this warm temperature, is it's actually going to evaporate some of the moisture that's in the fruit. It's going to dry it from the outside in. So it's going to dry it a little bit. And what it's also going to do is it's going to cause the skin to grow much thicker and more firm than it already is. Essentially, it's creating a shell, right? So it's going to create this thick shell around the fruit, which is going to act as a storage case, if you will, to protect the flesh inside. Once that's happened, this is going to sit there maybe 10, 14 days, couple weeks at this warm temperature. And then we're going to get it out of that. Then we're going to want to move it somewhere cool. A lot of people at this stage are going to want to clean the fruits, wipe it down. Some people will use hydrogen peroxide for this. Some people use a diluted bleach mixture, whatever it might be. Clean these fruits a little bit, get the bacteria off of them, make sure they're good and dry. Now we're going to store them somewhere cool. We're looking at 50 degrees or below for long-term storage. So this could be in your pantry. This could be, if you've got a root cellar, of course, that's ideal. Someplace cool and dark. And if properly cured, these fruits should last for months. And it's going to be determined really by the squash itself. I got a little graphic here that shows me some dates for fruits. You can see a thing like an acorn or delicata squash. That's going to be about 2 months in storage it'll keep, which is pretty good. If we think that's going to get us through December for sure. Hubbard squashes, the larger winter storage squash, they could last for 5 to 6 months. And then if we move into things like butternuts or Seminole pumpkins or whatever it might be, those are going to be 9 to 12 months. That's a year.
Yeah.
That these fruits. We have a butternut squash. How long's it been in there?
I think it's from last fall. And actually, I cannot believe that it still hasn't went bad. And it's just actually in my pantry cupboard.
Yeah, it's with the canned food.
Yeah. And we've had other butternuts last through the spring for sure.
Looking at this chart here, I'm realizing that this is sort of divided by species, really. So the acorns and those types of squash, those are Cucurbita pepos. So your pepo squash on average are going to be about 2 months. Your maximas, your Hubbards and those types of large squash, that's going to be the 5 to 6 months. And then your mochadas, that's going to be your longest storage fruits. And I love the mochadas. Those are my favorites anyways. Again, these are like the butternuts and Seminole pumpkins, your cheese squash, Long Island cheese is a variety. I love them so much, not only because they store so well, they're really easy to peel the skin off of. You could use a carrot peeler to get the skin off of them. It has a dry, firm flesh. It's not all, sloppy and juicy like some of those other squash. So for me, I find it to be more versatile in the kitchen, but also that storage capability is phenomenal. So those are really my favorites out of all the squash that we could grow.
So now that you kind of gave us an idea about the different varieties, how there's the, 3 or 4, actually technically 4 different kinds of squash species, that's what we need to really consider when we think about seed saving or saving our squash seeds, right?
Sure. So I mentioned a lot of different varieties, but yeah, when we think about seed saving, when we're planting our garden, we really need to focus more on species. Each species has, hundreds of varieties or whatever it might be. But in our gardens, we're typically going to come across 4 main species, 3 really, but in some places you'll find this 4th one. But the big ones here, I've mentioned a Cucurbita pepo, and that's going to be most of our summer squash, some of our winter squash, acorn squashes, delicatas, those types of things are going to fall into this pepo category. And then we've got Cucurbita maxima, which is most of your big honkin' winter squash. And then the mochadas being the butternut types. This is important from a seed saving point of view because squash plants are pollinated by insects. They're monoecious plants. So what this means is that they have separate male and female flowers on the same plant, and they require insects to move the pollen from the pollen shedding flower to the pollen receptive flower. And once we're dealing with insects, I mean, we got to look out for cross-pollination. When you have insects involved in the pollination process, cross-pollination is very likely if you are growing more than one variety of the same species. This is the important thing to understand, is that plants of different species are less likely to be able to be cross-pollinated by insects. So to go back to the different species, we've got Cucurbita pepo. So we're going to say zucchini. That's a good example of that. And then we've got Maxima. We're going to say Hubbard squash. Those two plants cannot cross-pollinate with each other because they're different species.
So I can grow a zucchini and a Hubbard in my garden next to each other and then realistically save the seeds from both of those plants.
Absolutely. And the seeds should come back true to type because cross-pollination is not a concern. We could go even further with that. And let's bring in that butternut squash, right? One of my favorites. That's Cucurbita moschata. Now, this again is a different species. So you can grow a zucchini, a Hubbard, and a butternut squash in your garden. Enjoy all those delicious squash. It's wonderful. You can save all those seeds. They're all going to come back true to type.
But what if I grew a zucchini and a delicata?
See, this is when it starts to get really tricky because there are so many different varieties within a species. So Cucurbita pepo, the zucchinis and the delicatas and the patty pans and the crooknecks, there are so many different varieties and they will cross-pollinate with each other. So if we want to grow different varieties of the same species, then we have to get more involved in the pollination process, right? So this is going to involve closing flowers. This is going to involve hand pollination. This is going to be a very involved process, most certainly. You become the bee in a way. You control manually the pollination of these flowers. So that could get a little bit tricky. So for folks that are new to growing squash or new to seed saving or whatever it might be, I always recommend just stick with one of each species. That's the easiest way to do this. Let's mention this fourth species. This one I think is worth mentioning. This is Cucurbita argyrosperma, sometimes referred to as mixta. This is your cushaw squash. This is very popular down in the southern part of the United States. I've been told by my friends in Kentucky that the cushaw squash is the greatest pie squash that there is. There's no reason to even try making pies out of any of the other ones.
Oh, man.
This is the one, right? And that is, again, now that's a fourth. So we can grow 4 different squash in our gardens with no concern about cross-pollination. This is an important thing for us to think about early in the season, right? When we're planning and planting our gardens, we want to be aware of that. Now, if we're just eating the fruits, doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, right? I mean, and even if I were to save the seeds from some possible cross-pollinated fruit, it wouldn't be the end of the world.
It would not be the end of the world. I mean, the seeds are going to produce something a little bit different, but they're going to be squash, and 99% of the time they're going to be edible and wonderful. So it's really not the end of the world if that happens. But if you're trying to preserve a very specific variety or a very particular trait, you want to be aware of that.
That's interesting. Saving the seeds is super simple, though, and it's literally the culinary act that you're probably already doing in the kitchen. So tell them how to do it.
It's super simple. If you've ever eaten a squash, you've already done this. You cut the squash open, scoop the seeds out, right? All you got to do now, throw these seeds into a colander, give them a good rinse to get all the stringy, clingy stuff off of them, lay it out onto paper plates, label the paper plate, set it out to dry for a couple of weeks. And that is literally all that you have to do. So you're waiting for the fruit to mature, but we're already doing that. You're cutting it open and extracting the seeds. Oh, we're already doing that, right? So it's just a matter of washing those seeds and laying them out to dry. Bada bing, seed saving.
The ones you're not doing that with is like a zucchini. And actually, we have a whole basket of super ripe zucchini in the kitchen right now that we're about to seed save from. But those are not something that I would want to eat in any capacity. They're big and gross, and they're kind of like seeping with ripeness.
These ones are super ripe.
What did squash say to the cucumber?
I don't know what.
You mean a great deal to me.
Oh, goodness.
Well, we love squash in the kitchen. One of the greatest, most popular ways to eat it is it's pumpkin seeds. And we've talked seeds now all throughout this episode, but this is about eating the seeds, roasting the pumpkin seeds and eating them.
Yeah, and it's funny to think about the seeds being the most popular part of the plant to eat, but it's true. I think growing up as a kid, I know I didn't want any bit with eating squash. I didn't want that. Pumpkin pie, maybe with a bunch of Cool Whip on it. I wanted the seeds. I still, to this day, that's my favorite part, is toasting and eating the seeds. I think it's just so versatile, too, because we could do so many different things with the seeds. You don't need a little salt. Little oil, toss them like that, roast them in the oven. That's fantastic. But you can get pretty elaborate with it.
Yeah, I mean, you've ever had squash seeds with, cumin on it or cayenne, or what about, have you ever had bear? It's an African spice that we like to put on our popcorn.
Oh yeah, cinnamon, sugar. You can do so many things. You can go savory, you can go sweet.
And pumpkin seeds really are a weird connection to the very roots of Small House here. When we first started Small House and we were pressing oil as one of the big things that we were doing, we had an abundance of seeds, hemp seeds and squash seeds and sunflower seeds. And so we decided that, and not only would we press the oil, but we would roast them and sell them in little bags. And they became one of a cute, popular product that people really liked.
Yeah, roasted and toasted seeds.
Yeah.
The pumpkin in particular was crazy popular. But pressing that oil, and we still press the oil to this day. Pumpkin seed oil is decadent, delicious. Oh my gosh, I love it so much.
Yeah, it's called the green gold of oil because of how, high in nutrient value it is. It's got this deep green color, but then depending on how you look at it, it also can be a deep red color. It's a very beautiful, amazing oil. If you've never seen it in real life or tasted it, I would definitely put that on a list.
I'm going to put a link to our pumpkin seed oil down in the show notes if you want to check it out, even just to see a picture of it, I guess. But if you want to give it a taste, I definitely recommend it because you can do so many things with it. Now, you don't want to cook with it. It doesn't take the heat. It's not like an oil for frying with by any means, but it's really nice as a salad dressing, marinade, drizzling it on things like a finishing oil, put it on soups and pastas. It's in France, they put it on eggs. It's a delicacy to put a drizzle of pumpkin seed oil on your eggs. Yeah, right. You got to try that. You got to try anything you could put pumpkin seed oil on. You should be doing it. It's nutty and flavorful. It's just such a tasty oil for sure.
But what about the pumpkin puree or the squash itself?
Yeah, so puree is one way that we could work with the flesh. I like to roast it in the oven. Even if I'm going to make a puree with it, you're going to want to cook it, soften it up, caramelize those sugars a little bit to bring that flavor out. But you can put it into soups, in chunks. You can make a curry with it. Would be really good.
Keep calm and curry on.
Yeah, keep calm and curry on with pumpkin puree. You put it in your roasted vegetables. You can put it in baked goods. Heather makes a really nice pumpkin bread that I really enjoy. For a while, you were putting it in vanilla ice cream.
Yeah, like making almost like a shake, but with pumpkin puree and ice cream. Oh, it was so good. But one time I made a pumpkin creamer, like a coffee creamer, and it was just the pureed pumpkin, a little sugar, and my half and half, and so much better than something you'd buy from the store that's loaded with sugar and kind of artificial flavor. So
you could put cinnamon and stuff in it, like pumpkin spice it.
Yeah, so good. It's so good. The puree is smooth like a butternut pickup line.
I don't get it.
The puree, it's smooth.
What's a butternut pickup line? This is where we line up to pick up the butternuts, obviously.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Got it. Let's just say this. I want to point out, though, that, we keep saying pumpkin right now when we're talking about using it in the kitchen. And pumpkin is just one of many types of squash, right? And in all of these cases, so many squashes could be interchangeable here, right? We could be using any squash that we want, whether that's for the seeds. All squash seeds are edible. All squash seeds can be pressed for their oil. All squash flesh can be used and eaten. You know what I mean? They're going to be different consistencies. They're different shades of orange, a little bit different flavor. Some are sweeter than others. Some are more watery, whatever it might be. So you pick one for your personal preference here, but all of them in the kitchen are basically interchangeable. Butternut, squash, seed, oil, fantastic, so there's a lot of different ways that we can work with this. So experiment and try different squash and find the ones that work best for you.
Definitely. But what about the squash leaves?
Sure. Isn't that cool to think about? Squash leaves, totally edible. Now, the big mature leaves, they get a little hairy and stuff. You're going to want to cook them down. But the young, tender tendrils and the new growth tops. And it's fun to think about how versatile this plant is. And we're so used to eating a pumpkin or eating the pumpkin seeds or carving it up for decoration or whatever. But there is so much of this plant that we can consume that we may not even be aware of, right? And the pumpkin leaves is certainly one of those.
Definitely. And you can actually eat the flowers too.
Well, the flowers, and some of our listeners might be aware of this, eating the flowers. Sometimes you'll see that where they're stuffed with like ricotta cheese or whatever it might be and cooked up. Yeah, the squash flowers are absolutely delicious. And this is going to come in handy if you think about early in the season when your plants are putting out a lot of male flowers, but they haven't produced any female flowers yet. So there's no pollination that even needs to happen. Don't waste those flowers. Pick them, eat them. Or the end of the year, when things are winding down and there's not enough time for a squash to grow, plant might still be flowering. Get out there and get them. That's like free food just waiting out there. They're beautiful. They're tasty. I think the flowers kind of have a sweetness to them, and they're just so pretty. We were in Italy, and they had at the market, they were selling zucchinis. They're little tiny, just tiny little zucchinis, but with the flower still attached to them. Beautiful. They look so cool on the plate, so it's decorative, but it's also delicious.
Definitely. It's amazing. It's almost every single piece of that plant you can eat.
Yeah, pretty cool.
It's pretty awesome.
So you want to make sure that we enjoy those plants as much as we can when they are fresh while they're out there. These things like these flowers, obviously they don't have much of a shelf life, so you're going to want to pick them and eat them and enjoy them. But the pumpkins, the squash themselves, certainly do have a shelf life. And there's a number of ways that we can preserve them. Of course, the easiest is just to preserve the squash. Cure it like we talked about, put it in your pantry, and then you can have it throughout the winter to enjoy, or all the way until next year in some cases with some of these fruits, which is really nice. But we could also make a puree out of it and put it in the freezer, save it that way if we want to. We could dehydrate it. This is a traditional indigenous way of preserving squash, taking it and hanging it around a fire and letting the fire slowly dehydrate the fruit. So cutting the fruit into rings, hanging it, letting it dry, and then you get that nice smoky flavor too. And we could replicate that indoors also if we want to just use our food dehydrator to dry our squash, or if you've got a freeze dryer. Freeze-dried squash, I'm sure, would be fantastic as well. And that way you can enjoy these fruits all year long.
So it's just a short walk over to the apothecary from here, because really, the kitchen and the apothecary are so, closely related, especially when it comes to this pumpkin, because you're getting such high nutrient value in the seed and in the oil and definitely in the flesh. So it is an easy transition to then talk about how we would use it in the apothecary.
Sure. Did you know that in the 1800s and early 1900s, the U.S. actually listed pumpkin seeds as an official medicine for the treatment of parasites? We've used this with our pigs. That's pretty common, is feeding pumpkins to pigs, because by consuming these seeds, it actually helps deworm the animals and keeps their intestines healthy and keeps them happy. But then we can also press these seeds for oil and utilize the oil in the apothecary. We can infuse herbs in it. We can make medicines out of it. What are some of the ways that we use pumpkin seed oil here at Small House?
I put pumpkin seed oil in a lip balm that I really love. I've put it in lotions. I put it in some salves. So same idea, where I'm taking the pumpkin oil and infusing it in herbs, or just using it as an extra boost to an already infused oil. So I know that I've made a calendula infused oil, added some pumpkin oil, and that makes a great salve. So it's a really great oil to use in body care products.
So it's cool to think about the pumpkin. I mean, we've covered it now basically from seed to seed, literally, and the multitudes of ways that we can use pumpkin in our lives, right? Whether we can just enjoy it in the garden, or, watching all the bees buzzing, doing their thing out there, or bringing the pumpkins into the kitchen and eating them, or using them for decorations, making medicine out of it. There's just so many wonderful things that we can do with this plant. So
squash enthusiasts are always in gourd spirits.
I'm feeling in gourd spirits as well, Heather. I think it's going to wrap it up for us today. You got any more jokes to see us out?
No, just squash you later.
Well, I guess that brings us to the end of yet another show together today. Thank you all so much for tuning in. You are all a big deal to us. Remember, if you enjoyed the show, you can always show your support by joining our Patreon community. You can find a link to that and so much more on our website, which is seedsandweedspodcast.com. This episode was edited and produced by all of us here at Small House Farm, and the music we're enjoying right now is a funky groove from Alex Gus. As always, I'm Bevan.
I'm Heather.
We'll see you next time.